Welcome to NTD News Today. I am Alice Tang. Here are our top stories. Millions of Americans are on alert for dangerous heat and humidity on the East Coast, while much of the Midwest grapples with flood risks. And so-called superfoods like dark chocolate, spinach, and nuts pose a health risk. Insights from NTD's Vital Signs on the substances in plant foods that could be impacting your health, gut, and immunity. Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem says new technology is coming to the TSA. We discuss with an aerospace and aviation expert.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
From a landmark trade agreement with Japan to a new task force investigating alleged intelligence abuses, NTD's Daniel Monahan has your White House Week in Review.
The United States finalized a sweeping trade deal with Japan this week.
They just signed the largest trade deal in history, I think maybe the largest deal in history with Japan.
Under the agreement, Japan will open its markets to items like U.S. cars and agricultural goods, while pledging to invest $550 billion into the American economy. President Trump also paid a visit to the Federal Reserve this week.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, and it feels very good, actually, to be back on a construction site.
The stop came days after the president criticized Fed Chair Jerome Powell over interest rates.
Europe lowered their rate 10 times. We lowered ours none. And it's causing a problem for people who want to buy a home.
Powell has warned a premature cut could worsen inflation and ultimately raise borrowing costs. The Justice Department announced a new task force to investigate alleged weaponization of the intelligence community. The move follows allegations from Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard that former President Obama and his national security team knowingly ordered the creation of a false intelligence assessment.
They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't.
A spokesperson for Obama responded, saying it's widely accepted that Russia sought to influence the 2016 election, but did not alter any votes. Columbia University agreed to pay over $200 million to settle federal claims of discrimination against Jewish students and employees. Trump thanked Columbia on Truth Social for, quote, agreeing to do what is right. Columbia's acting president said the settlement is not an admission of wrongdoing, but she acknowledged the impact of anti-Semitic incidents on campus. President Trump signed 3 executive orders on AI.
America is the country that started the AI race. And as President of the United States, I'm here today to declare that America is going to win it.
The orders fast-track permits for AI-related infrastructure, promote export of U.S. AI models abroad, and ban the use of so-called woke AI in federal agencies.
From now on, the U.S. government will deal only with AI that pursues truth, fairness, and strict impartiality.
President Trump invited in and signed hats for workers renovating the White House Rose Garden. The president also hosted the president of the Philippines this week.
He's very tough on negotiating, but that's okay. It'll work out.
Wrestling and entertainment icon Hulk Hogan died this week. The avid Trump supporter appeared at the 2024 Republican National Convention.
Let Trumpomania run wild, brother! Let Trumpomania rule again! Let Trumpomania make America great again!
President Trump signed an executive order giving states more authority to remove homeless individuals suffering from addiction or mental illness from the streets. The order pledges federal funding to expand treatment centers and outpatient programs. And finally, Australia announced it will ease long-standing restrictions on U.S. beef imports. President Trump praised the move, saying other countries that restrict U.S. beef are on notice. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
President Trump's rare visit to the Federal Reserve sparked a public backlash with Chair Jerome Powell over the ballooning cost of the central bank's renovation project. Economist Vance Ginn, president of Ginn Economic Consulting and a senior fellow at Young Americans for Liberty, joins NTD's Tiffany Meyer to weigh in on what he called major problems at the Fed.
Vance, thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you again. Now, the visit kicked off almost immediately with a disagreement, with Trump saying construction costs have ballooned to $3.1 billion and Powell disputing it. Zooming out a bit, there has been some criticism of this construction project, given that the Fed is supposed to be independent and fiscally responsible. How are you reading this?
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you, and I don't see that they're being fiscally responsible with their own operating budget. Not only are they running hundreds of billions of dollars in losses because they didn't manage their interest rate spread correctly, but now it could be $700 million, if not more than $1 billion in overrun from the initial $1.9 billion amount that was going towards these renovations. They could now be close to $3.1 billion, as the president mentioned today. This is not how you run an institution. This is not how you supposedly run an economy. If this is the way they want to go, then they're completely failing not only on the economic measures, but also on how they're renovating their own building. And so I think there's some major problems going on at the Fed by Jerome Powell.
Now, leading up to this trip, there's been some speculation that Trump might fire Powell, with analysts saying that would threaten the Fed's independence. Although today, when asked by a reporter, the president says he won't fire the Fed chair and that he believes Powell will, quote, do the right thing. What is your view of this?
Well, there's always been this idea that the Federal Reserve is independent and the president shouldn't have influence over the Fed, given that they control monetary policy and the amount of money supply and circulation. And now there's currently $6.7 trillion of assets on the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. So they are manipulating a lot of the economy. I mean, that's about 23% of GDP is just in their balance sheet. In that sense, if you think about it that way. And so now President Trump is basically asking questions, what's going on at the Fed? Senator Rand Paul has been calling for auditing the Fed. I think that would be a good step in the right direction. And so I'm not so sure the president should jawbone and try to bring down interest rates, especially at a time when inflation is well above the 2% inflation rate target. But at the same time, there should be questions asked to the Federal Reserve. They're not as independent as they look. They're definitely in connection with everything else going on in the economy. And when the Congress is already running $2 trillion plus deficits per year and $37 trillion in national debt, if interest rates are higher, you're going to pay more interest on that debt, and lowering it will mean more inflation. So they're caught in a bad situation, which really comes down to the Fed cutting its balance sheet and Congress cutting spending, which they seem unlikely to do.
Now, digging into that a bit, talk to us about what it means for the Fed to be independent as it was intended.
Well, I think it was intended. The Federal Reserve Act in 1913 created the Federal Reserve. There's been some changes over the years, over the decades since then. But really, it should mean that the Federal Reserve Chair should have independence, along with the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee, to make independent Federal Reserve decisions about monetary policy on their inflation rates, on their interest rate targets, and things of that nature that are separate or independent of what Congress is doing, what the president is doing. And so there should be some independence in that sense. The problem is if you look throughout history, is that they oftentimes are not independent. They do tend to work together and things of that nature. And sometimes there could be making bad decisions, I think quite often contributing to the inflationary pressures and the less economic growth that we have across the economy. And we're seeing that today. I think that the Fed printed too much money and they kept their interest rates too low for too long. Then they raised them and now they've come back down a little bit again. But the Federal Reserve's balance sheet is $6.7 trillion. That's not much independence.
Now, speaking of interest rates, Trump has criticized Powell for months over the Fed keeping the short-term interest rate at 4.3% this year after cutting it 3 times last year. Now, Powell says the Fed wants to wait and see how the economy responds to Trump's sweeping tariffs before making other changes, as he says those tariffs could push up inflation. What do you make of these two arguments?
Well, I mean, if you look at both of these, inflation overall is running about 2.7% headline inflation. The core, which exclude food and energy, the more stable prices that are out there, is closer to 2.9%. So those are well above the inflation rate target that's set by the Fed of 2%, which indicates that they shouldn't be lowering interest rates. Because if they lower interest rates, that means they buy Treasury securities, they print money, put more money in circulation. If you have more money chasing fewer goods or not as many goods, then you're going to get higher inflation. And that's what we had happen in the 1970s that I don't want to see happen again here in the 2020s. At the same time, unemployment rate shows 4.1%. There's some weaknesses that are here and there, but the Fed doesn't have any control over the labor market. They really only have control over inflation. And that's why I do not think that they should be lowering interest rates right now, and instead should be continuing to reduce their balance sheet. And that will help to correct a lot of the markets throughout the economy. And hopefully with the tax cuts made permanent from the One Big Beautiful Bill that Trump had pushed and everything else, I think that will allow for more economic growth and prosperity from pro-growth reforms. And by the way, too, the Fed's got to get out of this over-regulation sort of policy from Basel III and other types of financial regulations. They're really contracting a lot of loans to everyday Americans.
And Vance, from a different perspective, should the president have a say in the Fed's monetary policy?
Well, I think a president can say whatever they want. They got the bully pulpit of the presidency, while at the same time, it doesn't mean that the Federal Reserve chair has to listen and go off of that. Because what I'd rather not see is for monetary policy to be conducted through a lot of politics and creating more uncertainty in the overall economy. I'd rather it be done through rules-based policy actions, and that means not having the president come in and say what should exactly happen with those interest rates over time. But at the end of the day, I think a president has a right, that has the ability, the freedom of speech to say what they want about what the Fed should be doing. But you don't always see the Fed have to make those same decisions. And so that's where I'm kind of at on this right now.
All right, Vance, again, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
We're cutting to the live feed of President Trump meeting with President of EU, Ursula von der Leyen, at Scotland.
Well, I'd let you respond to that if you'd like.
So, we have been working intensively on the topic of irregular migration. And we have, from the very beginning, said that migration is a European challenge that needs a European answer. As Europeans, we will fulfill our international obligations, as we've done in the past, also in the future. But we, as Europeans, are the ones who decide who comes to the European Union and under what circumstances, and not the smugglers and traffickers. That's the principle in which we are working.
I will say this, they did ask me when I got off the plane, immigration, Europe has a tremendous problem, and we do too, but we've sealed our borders. We have nobody coming in, and we have hundreds of thousands of people being taken out, and the bad ones first. And I think we're doing a very good job of that. But it literally registered 0 people last month. You probably saw that, nobody. And Europe has a very similar problem. I think they're going to end up in the same place. You might as well go there quicker. And the other thing I say to Europe, we will not allow a windmill to be built in the United States. They're killing us. They're killing the beauty of our scenery, our valleys, our beautiful plains. And I'm not talking about airplanes. I'm talking about beautiful plains, beautiful areas in the United States. And you look up and you see windmills all over the place. It's a horrible thing. It's the most expensive form of energy. It's no good. They're made in China, almost all of them. When they start to rust and rot in 8 years, you can't really turn them off. You can't bury them. They won't let you bury the propellers, the props, because there's a certain type of fiber that doesn't go well with the land. That's what they say. The environmentalists say you can't bury them because the fiber doesn't go well with the land. In other words, if you bury it, it will harm our soil. The whole thing is a con job. It's very expensive. And in all fairness, Germany tried it, and wind doesn't work. You need subsidy for wind, and energy should not need subsidy. With energy, you make money. You don't lose money. But more important than that is it ruins the landscape. It kills the birds. They're noisy. You have a certain place in the Massachusetts area that over the last 20 years had 1 or 2 whales wash ashore, and over the last short period of time, they had 18, okay? Because it's driving them loco. It's driving them crazy. Now, windmills will not come. It's not going to happen in the United States. And it's very expensive. And I would love to see, today I'm playing the best course, I think, in the world, Turnberry. Even though I own it, it's probably the best course in the world, right? And I look over the horizon and I see 9 windmills. It's like right at the end of the 18th. I said, isn't that a shame? What a shame You have the same thing all over Europe in particular. You have windmills all over the place. Some of the countries prohibit it, but people ought to know that these windmills are very destructive. They're environmentally unsound, just the exact opposite. Because the environmentalists, they're not really environmentalists. They're political hacks. These are people that they almost want to harm the country. But you look at these beautiful landscapes all over the world. Many countries have gotten smart. They will not allow it. They will not. It's the worst form of energy, the most expensive form of energy. But windmills should not be allowed. Okay. I did.
Are they doing enough to stop this?
I hope so. You're talking about Cambodia and Thailand? So I had an interesting time. We're dealing with Thailand, and we do a lot of trade with Thailand and with Cambodia. And yet, I'm reading that they're killing each other. They're fighting. They're in a war. And I say, this should be an easy one for me because I've settled with India and Pakistan, and Serbia and Kosovo was going at it, but they have for a long time, in all fairness. Right? You know about that. And others, the Congo. And what's gone on there. That's been a horrible thing with Rwanda. That's been a horrible thing. 31 years, 7 million, 8 million people killed. Machetes all over the place. It's a terrible thing. We got that one solved. We did 5 of them. And I was saying, we have a trade deal. We were working on we finalized another trade deal yesterday. And I asked my people, I said, how are we doing with Cambodia and how are we doing with Thailand? And they say they're going to be coming in at some point to talk. I said, well, let's call them right now. So I called the prime ministers of each. And I said, we're not going to make a trade deal unless you settle the war. A lot of people are killed, that in a short period of time. The border, they're fighting pretty like wild. And I spoke to both of the prime ministers, and I think by the time I got off, I think they want to settle now. I know they're meeting today or tomorrow, and we're going to work with them. Marco Rubio's working with them also, his people, and him. I think we're going to get that. That would be a great thing, but that would have turned out to be a bad one. And I will tell you, India and Pakistan, they were really getting ready to go at it. So getting those things settled, if I can do it, and if I can use trade to do that, it's my honor. But I had great talks with 2 very good people that they both really would like to make a deal. So we'll see what happens. Okay, how about 1 more, 2 more?
Europe's now spending a lot more on defense, thanks to you.
They are.
Should they get a fairer deal on trade and exchange?
Well, they're spending a lot on defense, but we're spending a lot more. And we've been very generous to NATO for many, many years. And but we had a terrific meeting with NATO. I'd love to do as well. We had a meeting where they put up 5% instead of 2%, and they're going to pay it instead of not paying. Because, many people didn't pay the 2% or anywhere near it, and the 2% was too low. And we're going to be sending now military equipment and other equipment to NATO, and they'll be doing what they want, but I guess for the most part, working with Ukraine. But we had a fantastic meeting. I guess it's now almost 4 weeks ago. One of the best meetings they've ever had at NATO. And the spirit and the coming together was incredible. And I stood and I listened to almost 30 speeches. That was a lot. And I was really late and I had to leave, but I didn't want to leave before those last 10 spoke, because they'd go home and they'd tell their wife, Trump left. And they were so nice to the United States. They were all mentioning the United States and me, but they were mentioning the United States to be here. It's such an honor, et cetera. And I thought it would have been inappropriate. But I did stay. It was very hard because I was extremely late for something else that was, pretty important. And we had a tremendous NATO meeting. I'm sure you heard that too. Yep. It was great. There's some great people that you deal with on 2 fronts, right? But you deal with on primarily the trade front. But I will tell you, they came together and the relationship is really good. That was it's an interesting question, because you probably have reported it that way. It really, we came together, and they went from 2% to 5%, which nobody would have thought that was even Who would even think that? Because they didn't want to be at 2%. All of a sudden, they're 5%. And that's the right number. And so it was a great honor. I got to know the heads of those countries really very well at that meeting almost a month ago. Okay? Thank you very much, everybody. We'll let you know what's happening. Thank you.
Will you be visiting your Irish golf course anytime soon, Doonbeg?
I will. I love Doonbeg. I'll go. It's not in the Strip, but I'll go soon. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, where we came from. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thanks, President. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Wait. Get the tripod and do that. Thanks, guys.
Grab that foot. Most foot. Lock it in. You're good. Watch your cable.
That was the meeting between President Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Coming up, millions of Americans are on alert for dangerous heat and humidity on the East Coast, while much of the Midwest grapples with flood risks. What is the Chinese regime's unrestricted warfare strategy, and how is the Chinese Communist Party attempting to shape narratives in print and broadcast media? NTD spoke with a China analyst for insight.
Divinely inspired traditional oil painting inspires compassion. Artwork created in truth and beauty illuminates a path to goodness. Rediscover traditional art, revive classical culture. We warmly invite oil painters from around the world to participate in the 7th NTD International Figure Painting Competition, a celebration of classical realism. Please visit oilpainting.ntdtv.com.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
You are not hidden. There's never been a moment you were forgotten. You are not hopeless. Though you have been broken, your innocence stolen. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you.
On streets across America, young people are homeless, abused, in danger. Covenant House is helping young people with nowhere else to turn. But the need is overwhelming. Please call or go online now with your gift of $19 a month. You'll help provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love to more than 2,000 young people who sleep at a Covenant House every night. Homeless young people are afraid and alone. Your monthly donation right now will show them they are loved and safe.
I have no words to express how Covenant House changed my life.
Call or go online now and give just $19 a month. We'll send you this comforting blanket as a reminder of the difference you're making in a young person's life.
I will rescue you.
Call or go online now to safeplacetosleep.org.
Welcome back, I'm Alice Tang. Millions of Americans are dealing with dangerous heat and humidity this weekend. Much of the East Coast is seeing temperatures well into the 90s, with feels-like temperatures in triple digits. While the East Coast grapples with crippling heat, many parts of the Midwest are dealing with heavy downpours and flash flooding. Here's a closer look at the extreme weather sweeping the nation.
Heavy rains triggering flash flooding in parts of the Midwest. Drivers stranded Friday in several inches of water in Chicago. Owners of this gas station in Kansas City wading in water nearly up to their waists.
There was a few cars in the water already, people walking. I was worried about people in the cars.
The strong storms toppling trees. This one landing on a home, puncturing a hole in the roof.
That tree hit and shook the whole house. We saw water running in our ceiling.
Many of these areas already saturated by rain could see more heavy downpours Saturday, with the greatest threat in the upper Midwest. Meanwhile, more than 80 million people are under a major heat risk this weekend, with temperatures up to 10 degrees higher for this time of year. The feels-like temperatures reaching the triple digits in some areas.
These dots indicate the areas that are dealing with their hottest summer to date on record.
For some areas, the blistering heat continues into next week.
The U.S. Agency for Global Media, parent of news outlet Voice of America, is under scrutiny. Memos uncovered in a sweeping review by the agency by senior advisor Kari Lake and her staff point to a lax vetting of employees with past connections to Chinese state media. NTD's Carrie Duntz discussed the matter with Steve Yates, Senior Research Fellow for China and National Security Policy at the Heritage Foundation. Take a listen.
What are your initial reactions to this new finding?
Well, that finding is consistent with some of the experience that I had when I was serving as president of Radio Free Asia. And the Agency for Global Media Affairs had found a number of questions about the hiring and vetting and review of conduct of several employees under their purview, including at the Voice of America. There were some disciplinary proceedings that had proceeded, some removals that moved forward, and there were legal challenges to those. And when the Biden administration came in, all of those actions were reversed, and a lot of these people were brought back with back pay. And so not only were there no reviews of what the disciplinary processes were, they reversed them. And so if they're trying to get people with Chinese language ability that have journalistic capability, well, if you don't really care about malign influences of the CCP, then you go to people in Chinese media. And that appears to be what Kari Lake was finding.
Wow. And what types of risk do these potential reporters with ties to the Xinhua news agency or CCP-controlled media expose America to, especially if they have these, adversarial ties? And, what do you think should be done going forward? It sounds like you were doing something about it before, in the previous Trump administration. But, what should we be doing now to vet and make sure that nobody still maintains in these organizations that might have that malign influence?
Well, first and foremost, the Voice of America is supposed to be the voice of America, not the voice of the CCP. And no taxpayer money should ever be going to an outlet that is giving voice to the manipulations of the Chinese Communist Party trying to shape American or other people's views of America. So really, it's just a fundamental failure of mission for anything remotely like this to have happened. And really, we should be beyond accusation on this. So there's plenty of people from free countries around the world who speak Mandarin fluently, may even be trained in journalism. That just seemed to be a failure of effort to be able to fill that kind of programming. But it all goes back to the Voice of America. If it's going to exist and broadcast at all, it needs to be the voice of Americans and the story of America to the world. And even if it's choppy Mandarin, so what? The message will get out.
And staying with that, for someone who may not be familiar with this, could you summarize what the CCP's unrestricted warfare strategy is and how media is one of its key pillars?
Well, it's really in all parts of American life. Fundamentally, what they do in the ideal is they get Americans to undermine American institutions so they don't have to. This is what they did in Hong Kong to undermine the judiciary, academia, media, everything. And in the end, Hong Kong was no longer a separate system distinguished from the PRC. And in the United States, it's similarly going to every element of our life. But first and foremost in this comprehensive warfare is control over language, because control over words controls thoughts, and thoughts lead to actions. And so they go to the head of the snake and try to manipulate those words and those messages by way of influencing media.
Now, outside of Voice of America, are you familiar with other CCP attempts to shape narratives at print and broadcast media here in the U.S.?
There have been many. I think one of the most infamous was when people used to get the newspaper by print edition, and some people still do. The Washington Post and I think the Des Moines Register had an insert that was paid for by China Daily, and it did say China Daily on it. But a casual reader of that newspaper would see that insert with all this lovely information about China as just being a part of the regular paper. They wouldn't understand this is a paid ad by a foreign agent. And so the things had seeped in that way, but also by trying to give posh trips to influencers and social media. There's a lot of YouTubers that will say go to Xinjiang and shockingly find nothing wrong because the government arranged trip didn't allow them to see any of the atrocities. They come back and try to spin to American audiences. So they try to influence the influencers, and they try to financially, in some ways, undermine the institutions, either with ads, in some cases, trying to get part ownership.
Now, part of this unrestricted warfare is, of course, using our open society against us, where we could not just go into their closed society where they control all means within the the media and the business communities. So what should we be doing without restricting our own freedoms to counteract this unrestricted warfare effort by the CCP?
Well, I think it begins with accepting the truth as you described, that there is an unrestricted warfare campaign being engaged against us, and our only question is whether and how to respond. Some might call it a Cold War. We can use other kinds of terms for it, but really it comes with that acknowledgement and mentality. And then, yes, we should have a lot of protection and vigorous defense of fundamental freedoms for American citizens first, and those who are blessed to come here and operate in good faith within our system. But for those who don't come here operating in good faith, or those who seek hostility towards it, I think the Trump administration has begun to try to get people to understand that coming to the United States is a privilege, not a right, whether you're a student on a visa or otherwise. And I think that they have begun the process of pushing back the biggest problems, but it really comes down to a mentality among Americans to protect our institutions and fundamental freedoms. We've had a fight over the First Amendment in the recent years with a lot of censorship, and I think the pendulum swung back in the direction of freedom in that regard, but it requires constant vigilance by every generation to protect this for ourselves, but against those who seek to undermine it. And this generation's struggle is with the Communist Party of China.
Well, we appreciate you sharing your insights with us this morning. Thank you, Steve Yates.
President Donald Trump visited the Federal Reserve headquarters on Thursday amid ongoing tensions between his administration and the central bank. Trump has been critical of Powell for not cutting interest rates more aggressively. For analysts, NTD's Don Ma spoke to economist Lydia Mashburn-Newman, Managing Director of Monetary Economics at the American Institute for Economic Research.
What do you think might be motivating President Trump's recent comments and his visit to the Federal Reserve?
Yeah, so as we know, President Trump has been pretty critical of Chairman Powell, too late Powell, as he's been calling him, among other names. And most of his criticism has been geared toward Powell's monetary policy decisions. But the president is prevented from removing the chair of the Fed for anything but cause. But in recent weeks, in the last month or so, there have been calls that perhaps there is a possibility of removing him for the cost overruns of this federal building project, these renovations to two areas of the Federal Reserve's real estate. And so the administration has been diving into this in detail to try to figure out if there is really a level of misconduct in the cost overruns of this project. Some other legislators have been curious if Powell may have potentially misspoke or may have even perjured himself to a certain extent by stating the costs of this building renovation. But a lot of it seems to be geared toward making an avenue for dealing with the concerns that President Trump has with the stance of interest rates. So it really actually comes down to the stance of monetary policy, Trump wanting the Fed to cut and the Fed not having cut, at least not cut this year during his presidency. And so I do think that that might be spilling over quite a bit into this conversation about cost overruns in this building project.
So on this subject, the independence of the central bank or the Federal Reserve come into question. So maybe we can talk about that. Could you explain for those that are not well versed in the subject why it is important to have independence of the Federal Reserve?
So this is a great question. What we mean by independence is actually incredibly important. A lot of people assume we say independence, meaning we want this entity to be completely outside of the scope of any elected officials. But our Constitution actually requires that the Federal Reserve be accountable to Congress, because our Constitution rests our monetary authority with Congress, and they have delegated it to the Federal Reserve to behave in a way that maximizes what is in statute. They're supposed to maximize employment, and they're supposed to create long-run steady prices. And so that is what the Fed is tasked with doing by Congress. And so that is a level of independence, but also a level of accountability that Congress has over the Fed and that the Fed has to Congress. The independence that a lot of people are concerned about is whether political pressure can push on the scales of monetary policy to sort of be expedient for whoever might be in power at that time. So we're talking about sort of using monetary policy, which is the authority and power to create money, in order to juice the economy to potentially benefit those who have been elected to political office. That's the kind of independence you do want to have, because we have a ton of history that shows if a government can put pressure on your monetary authority to print money when it's expedient for them, it leads to long-term economic downturns. It can overextend the economy. It leads to the boom and bust cycle of the business cycle, and it can lead to recessions or even depressions. So it might be expedient in the front end to lower rates quite a bit, like President Trump has been asking for. But if they are lower than what the economy really needs, it actually can cause really poor incentives in the economy that can have disastrous consequences later down the road. And we saw this somewhat in the Great Depression era. We saw this also happen under Lyndon Johnson as well as President Nixon, where both of them put pressure on the Federal Reserve chairs to make monetary policy easier or looser, that is, print more money. And both of those led to the buildup that created the great both inflation and stagflation we experienced in the 1970s. So it is this, when we say independence, we're trying to prevent that kind of thing from happening. But we also want to be clear, the Fed is accountable to Congress. So for cost overruns like this building project, this is something that we would actually like to see some good sunlight to be shed on it to make sure they're acting in good faith with their efforts in this building project as well as any other operations.
So the question is, if the president says it'll be nice to have a lower interest rate, the benchmark Fed funds rate, or commenting on the benefits of cutting rates by 1% or whatever the number may be, is that undermining at all, just commenting on that, undermining monetary policy, the independence of the Federal Reserve?
Yeah, there are some arguments that the Fed delaying having cut interest rates throughout the entirety of 2025 is almost the opposite of the political pressure, meaning they are actually succumbing to political pressure that is trying to get them to reduce rates by not then reducing rates. And the thing that as economists we want to do is we want to figure out, it shouldn't be about whether one group wants rates lower or another group doesn't want them to go low yet. What we want want to say is, what is the economy actually calling for? What is the level of interest rates that actually match up with the savings and investment in the economy? And the Fed should be targeted toward that type of effort, as opposed to holding rates steady because they don't want to look like they are succumbing to political pressure, or reducing rates simply because of political pressure. So a lot of this has kind of gotten a little tangled. And what I like to encourage people to do is look through all the noise of the rhetoric, and let's look at what the economy needs and have a substantive conversation about what should the level of interest rates actually be, given where the economy is today, both in terms of growth, inflation, and employment. And so those are the factors that really should be driving monetary policy, not one group wanting rates lower or another group wanting to protest by keeping rates steady, which one might argue is what some of what the Federal Reserve officials have been doing of late.
Coming up, could so-called superfoods like dark chocolate, spinach, and nuts pose a health risk? Insights from NTD's Vital Signs on the substances in plant foods that could be impacting your gut health and immunity.
When I arrived in the U.S. at 19, I struggled to find job opportunities without a high school diploma. My name is Ariel, and my entire life changed when I took a chance and I got my high school diploma at age 22. Everything I have, my education, my career, my marriage, I owe to the Adult Literacy Center and my teachers. They were with me every step of the way, helping with my English and math, making sure I pushed through all the challenges. Oh my goodness.
So Ariel, we made this yearbook for you. It has notes from all the people that are here. Your achievement has set an example for so many students. Most importantly, your daughter.
Education was the key that unlocked all my opportunities.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
I am so glad you ladies are here. You each have your own rooms.
Thank you.
Get settled in. I'll call you for dinner. Adopting teen sisters, it's a lot. Girls, you're gonna be late. You want breakfast?
No thanks, we're good.
They're always in their own world.
What'd you get there?
Twice the work. Twice the surprises.
Just try it.
Good. But if you think of it that way, they're also twice as fulfilling.
I think you should ask her yourself.
Is it okay to call you Mom?
Of course you can.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to NTD. I'm joined in studio by NTD health correspondent and host of Vital Signs, Brendan Fallon. Vital Signs offers natural and nutritional ways of optimizing our health. Brendan, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Alice.
So what do you have for us today?
Today, I don't mean to alarm you, but many of the plant foods that we're eating may actually be trying to kill us. I know it's shocking, but allow me to explain. You've probably heard of kidney stones. It's a very common condition where these stones, they're oxalate crystals largely from plant foods. They accumulate in the kidney, and then people will urinate these crystals out, and it's a very painful experience. What we're starting to hear more and more, particularly from people in the carnivore community, is that it's not just limited to this effect, that these oxalates are having multiple effects in the body, including in the joints, where they may also be accumulating and causing things like certain forms of arthritis. And as people who are taking like a carnivore diet, they're cutting out plant foods, cutting oxalate, they're experiencing a lessening of their inflammation.
But isn't plant foods good for you? Aren't they healthy?
Of course, I mean, there's plenty of nutrients in plant foods. That's why we're eating so many. That's why they're pushed as much as they are. But this is one element that has been largely ignored. And this lady I spoke to recently, Sally Norton, she's written a book about this called Toxic Superfoods. And I want to play a clip from her just talking about exactly what oxalates are and how they might be impacting the body.
Oh, wonderful. Let's watch this clip.
When you're eating plants like spinach, chard, beet greens, almonds, cashews, peanuts, these really high oxalate foods, a lot of the gluten-free grains like the pseudo grains like quinoa, teff, chia, all that stuff is high in oxalate, but you're getting oxalic acid, which is a tiny individual molecule that's an ion that gets in your blood, and calcium oxalate crystals that the plants make. Now, those crystals, some of them are specifically designed to wound your digestive tract. They're like little arrows or double-pointed toothpickies, really tiny things that can get through 2 cells deep and literally wound the mucosal membrane that lines your mouth and your entire digestive tract. So eating this shredded glass is caustic and stressful, and so is the oxalic acid both. So you can get into trouble with oxalate, but often it comes along with some other plant toxins like lectins and other things that do their own damage. So if you're eating a diet that's full of these things, you could end up with gut problems. Now, the gut is more than digestion. It's your nervous system, it's your immune system, it's a whole sensory organ that's helping the body kind of know the outside world by knowing what you're eating. So it's quite a problematic center when you get into chronic health problems that have gut problems. And oxalate can get that going. It can get neurotoxicity going. It can get connective tissue problems with your joints and this kind of inflammatory swelling and pain syndromes that are affecting your joints and connective tissue. So
she just described these little oxalate things as glass shards. And how are they different from fiber?
Well, I mean, just in terms of that, fiber has a very different constitution to it, a very different structure to it. And fiber is also playing it's interesting you should bring up fiber, because fiber can be a potential antidote to the effects of these oxalate crystals, in that fiber is something that will feed your gut bacteria. And you know, Alice, we spoke before about the microbiome. I know this is something you have a specific interest in. If you have a healthy microbiome, you're likely to have enough supply of a certain microbial called Oxalobacter formagenes, and this is something that can break down the oxalate crystal, so it's not going to be such a big issue for you. And I want to emphasize, this isn't necessarily a problem for everyone, like having to worry about oxalates, but for some people, if they're having joint pain, if they're finding they're getting sick a lot, if they're having gut issues, and maybe they're trying everything and they're not finding a solution, this may be something they want to look at.
So instead of consuming more oxalates or even just fiber that comes with oxalates, they should just cut it out completely.
People are doing this. Some people are doing that in terms of a carnivore diet. I mean, and this is a kind of diet that's definitely gaining in popularity, and people seem to be getting significant health benefits from it. There's also a strong argument out there that you're going to lose a lot of nutritional value if you're going to cut out plants completely. Mm-hmm. So I'd say the jury isn't exactly, is still out on this issue. But I'd say it's something that people would probably want to look into if they are experiencing these issues, and particularly if they are getting kidney stones, because that's a serious indication that their oxalate level is too high.
So some specific health problems should be looked into, especially with oxalates.
I think so, certainly. And here, Sally talks about some of the main offenders. These are the main offenders, and it might be a little sensitive for certain viewers because these are foods that many of us love and cherish, but some of them are particularly high in oxalates, so they may need to be considered.
Oh dear, let's watch this clip.
What are the top 10 offenders on the oxalate list that you'd say are doing the most damage to people's health?
Potatoes, because they're so universally used day in and day out. You can get hash browns, fries, chips, baked. I mean, all day long you can have them 3 times a day. Now sweet potatoes are really popular. Peanuts and peanut butter, because again, we start using them in childhood and use them over and over again. Chocolate has become like something that's supposedly healthy for you now. So more and more people are doing darker and darker chocolate more often, thinking they're doing something healthy.
The darker the chocolate, the less healthy, the more oxalate.
Right, the more oxalate.
So you're 100% dark chocolate. That's the most oxalate concentrated.
Yeah. So
you're better off buying the
milk chocolate. You're better off with the milk chocolate.
Might as well enjoy yourself.
You might as well, and probably you ought to get wise to lead and cadmium and ask your chocolate companies to test their chocolates, because there's other toxins and natural ones and the contaminants that get picked up in the growing process and processing process. So chocolate has this healthy glow without maybe deserving it. And that's true of spinach, chard, and beet greens. The really off the chart thing is chard and beet greens and spinach. Those are now being pushed on us as the answer to all your health problems. If you just eat enough of these things, you can do what you want. And papering them over health problems or over a marginal diet is the worst thing you could do.
It seems like everything we love has oxalates. Yeah.
It's shocking news for many people. I'm definitely a lover of dark chocolate, and I have cut back personally. But I think it's kind of case by case. You need to look at your own situation and see if you're having trouble with these different things we've talked about, like joint issues in particularly, gut, if you're getting sick a lot. And if people want to check out this full video, Sally goes into detail about the different ways this problem can manifest. And also substitutes. If you are going to try and reduce your oxalate intake, there are other foods that you can take in place of those that may be just as tasty.
Seems like a nice, healthy, balanced diet is the way to go.
Everything in moderation, I think.
To see the full Vital Signs interview on toxic superfoods, just go to your web browser and enter ept.ms/toxicsuperfood. A good sleep is critical for overall health, but the CDC says about 1 in 3 U.S. adults report not getting enough of it. Here are some simple ways to get a good night's rest.
Just like eating, drinking, and breathing, sleep is a basic need and one many in the U.S. don't meet.
Most people have difficulty falling asleep at one point or another, or they wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep.
Sleep deficiency is linked to many chronic health problems like heart disease, kidney disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, stroke, obesity, and depression. If you're having problems getting those Z's, there are simple ways to set yourself up for success, says Dr. Sanjay Gupta.
The first one is something called cognitive shuffling, where you think of random, non-emotional words, and then you pick an item and spend a few seconds thinking of words that start with each letter in that item. So, for example, let's use shoe. The first letter is S, sock, soccer, spoon. Then H, horse, hare, hippo. You get the idea.
Gupta says this practice can help quiet your mind and block stressful thoughts that may be keeping you awake. Next tactic, he says to rely on good old-fashioned comfort.
Sleep with your socks on maybe. Use a weighted blanket. Even snuggle with the stuffed animal, no matter how old you are.
Finally, understand what makes you sleep and turn whatever that is into a habit that you follow every night before going to bed.
These tips and sticking to a nightly routine can provide signals to your body that it's time to wind down.
Coming up, the U.S. will soon be charging a new visa integrity fee for incoming travelers. A travel blogger shares her insights on the update. Stay with us and we'll bring you more news right after this break.
The bladder control aisle. You won't shop here again. Your private business is your own. The constant struggle is over. Now there's a better way. It's HDIS. We home deliver bladder control products. We understand how you feel. For over 25 years, we've home delivered to many of the 20 million Americans who deal with incontinence. We offer all brands. We pay shipping and use plain, unmarked boxes. If we can help you or someone you care for, call for your free product sample pack and $45 in money-saving coupons. Our counselors will help you choose the right product. And unlike stores, we're always in stock. You'll get what you need. Satisfaction guaranteed. HDIS, the better way.
For your free sample pack with your free catalog, $45 in money-saving coupons, and free product samples, call 1-800-701-6159. That's 1-800-701-6159.
There's cultures that have been lost, but this culture hasn't been. The artist is showing us our sense of who we are, where we came from. You look at his hat. His hat is knitted probably by a man because a man traditionally knitted the hats. That hat tells you the story of who this person is, what his place in the culture is, the animals around him. Everything's all contained in the messages in the hat. And the tool that he's carrying over his shoulder. This is a centuries-old tool that has been able to rework the mountains. Those traditions are invaluable, and if we don't honor those traditions, then we're rootless. The artist is showing us the value of maintaining our culture and respecting our culture.
My name is Iris Tao, and I'm NTD's White House correspondent. I was born in China, mainland China, so I grew up, kind of like absorbing a lot of the Chinese propaganda, both in school, when it comes to newspapers, TV, and everything. But when I first came to the US, I moved here with my family, and then I was experiencing this cultural shock when I saw a lot of, let's say, human rights issues in China. So that's what kind of motivated me to actually start interning for NTD. In my current role, I actually report for both English NTD and Chinese NTD. So I think what drives me every day is a sense of responsibility, not only to the English audience, but also to the Chinese audience, which actually spreads both across the US, around the world, and actually a lot of them are inside China who uses like VPN or some other technologies to break through the firewall to watch NTD. So I think a big sense of responsibility comes from my urge to tell them what's happening, how China is being discussed on the world stage, how different governments are talking about China's human rights abuses. So I think NTD is one of the few, if not the only one, outlet, maybe not only in the US but across the world, where it's actually independent from any political party, economic forces, but most importantly, independent from the CCP's pressuring campaign. We know that, even if you're not a Chinese language outlet, you're an American outlet or like a foreign language outlet, it's very hard to, not be pressured by the Chinese Communist Party, given the many economic ties you might have. For example, you have a bureau in China, and you have employees there, you have to gather news sources, so many kinds of channels where the CCP can actually influence your reporting. And I think that's what makes NTD's reporting unique when it comes to international affairs and also domestic policies, because it really matters to Americans in daily lives.
Welcome to NTD News Today. I am Alice Tang. Here are our top stories. President Trump this Sunday sits down with the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. He says the US-EU trade agreement in the works could be the biggest deal ever, and that we could find out more within the hour. A new bill seeks to put American entrepreneurs first and ensure only US citizens can access small business loans. Learn how it works. The US will soon begin charging a new visa integrity fee for incoming travelers. A travel blogger shares her insights on the update. Learn about the world's first streaming platform dedicated to uplifting values-driven entertainment. It's called We the Studios streaming platform.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
From a landmark trade agreement with Japan to a new task force investigating alleged intelligence abuses, NTD's Daniel Monahan has your White House in review.
The United States finalized a sweeping trade deal with Japan this week.
I just signed the largest trade deal in history, I think maybe the largest deal in history with Japan.
Under the agreement, Japan will open its markets to items like U.S. cars and agricultural goods, while pledging to invest $550 billion into the American economy. President Trump also paid a visit to the Federal Reserve this week.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, and it feels very good, actually, to be back on a construction site.
The stop came days after the president criticized Fed Chair Jerome Powell over interest rates.
Europe lowered their rate 10 times, we lowered ours none. And it's causing a problem for people who want to buy a home.
Powell has warned a premature cut could worsen inflation and ultimately raise borrowing costs. The Justice Department announced a new task force to investigate alleged weaponization of the intelligence community. The move follows allegations from Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard that former President Obama and his national security team knowingly ordered the creation of a false intelligence assessment.
They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't.
A spokesperson for Obama responded, saying it's widely accepted that Russia sought to influence the 2016 election, but did not alter any votes. Columbia University agreed to pay over $200 million to settle federal claims of discrimination against Jewish students and employees. Trump thanked Columbia on Truth Social for, quote, agreeing to do what is right. Columbia's acting president said the settlement is not an admission of wrongdoing, but she acknowledged the impact of anti-Semitic incidents on campus. President Trump signed 3 executive orders on AI.
America is the country that started the AI race, and as President of the United States, I'm here today to declare that America is going to win it.
The orders fast-track permits for AI-related infrastructure, promote export of U.S. AI models abroad, and ban the use of so-called woke AI in federal agencies.
From now on, the U.S. government will deal only with AI that pursues truth, fairness, and strict impartiality.
President Trump invited in and signed hats for workers renovating the White House Rose Garden. The president also hosted the president of the Philippines this week.
He's very tough on negotiating, but that's okay. It'll work out.
Wrestling and entertainment icon Hulk Hogan died this week. The avid Trump supporter appeared at the 2024 Republican National Convention.
Let Trumpomania run wild, brother! Let Trumpomania rule again! Let Trumpomania make America great again!
President Trump signed an executive order giving states more authority to remove homeless individuals suffering from addiction or mental illness from the streets. The order pledges federal funding to expand treatment centers and outpatient programs. And finally, Australia announced it will ease long-standing restrictions on U.S. beef imports. President Trump praised the move, saying other countries that restrict U.S. beef are on notice. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
A new bill seeks to put American entrepreneurs first and make sure only U.S. citizens can access small business loans. NTD's Steve Lance sat down with U.S. Republican Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne from Texas to talk about her new bill and how it works.
Congresswoman, thanks so much for taking a moment.
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy you guys are here.
We're happy to be here. What is the real feeling right now in the state of Texas when it comes to illegal immigration?
I think, there's concern. How many people came in? How many want to do harm? We know, what is it? I've heard figures between 12 and 22 million people came in the last 4 years. We don't know how many of those people are from terrorist nations that really want to do us harm. I think there's concern right now. In addition to that, part of what we're trying to do with this bill is get control of the spending and get control of the incentives that we were sending out to folks who are in our country illegally. People are working hard for their dollars. And they're seeing their tax money now being spent on folks who are here illegally, whether or not that was Medicaid benefits or whether or not free phones, free plane tickets to go any place you want, free health care, free housing. And I think, pulling that back and saying stop is important. And that was definitely part of this bill.
To your point, you're focused on the SBA, the Small Business Administration. And you've recently introduced some legislation to help American citizens. Unpack that for us.
So what we wanted to be able to do there's a number of different bills that we passed that we've introduced for SBA, but specifically we were looking at folks who are not here legally, not getting SBA loans. We have a lot of burgeoning, young businesses that are trying to get by, and SBA should be used for those folks. So part of one of our bills is looking at pulling back folks dollars that were going outside. I couldn't believe what a fight it was in our small business committee. Like literally, we had Democrats who were arguing that all we want to do is validate ID in your legal status. And we had Democrats that didn't want to do that. It was very frustrating. And one of the other bills that I've introduced was taking dollars away from sanctuary cities. So if you are a sanctuary city, if you've had, a vote on it, which a number of them have, you even have some states like California that's done that, pull back their federal funding. You are putting not only your own constituents at harm's way, but you're also making it a lot more costly for Immigration and Customs Enforcement to do their job. And as we have seen in Alvarado and in other places, they're putting the lives of these ICE agents now in harm's way. So it's a carrot and a stick approach. You try to incentivize, you try to make funds available for those law enforcement agencies that are doing the job. But for those cities who are just basically flipping the bird to them, this is a way of saying, okay, fine, we're going to cut off your federal funding.
Congresswoman, lastly, the state of Texas on a state level has been very proactive in coming up with policy to combat the Chinese Communist Party, whether it's through farmland, all various measures. What do you think needs to be done on the national level and the federal level?
It's a good question. I think there's a number of bills that we have been introduced. You've seen the executive orders, what Burke Rollins is trying to get done, saying that we can't sell land to Chinese foreign owners that's that farmland. But I think we need to even go beyond that. If you look at land that is next to some of our major energy centers, our infrastructure centers, our airports, our military bases, those should all be causes of concern. When you have seen what Ukraine has been able to do with just a swarm of drones, imagine if that is used at any of the facilities that I just mentioned, the amount of destruction and damage long-term that can cause. And again, this ties into illegal immigration. You're selling that land to countries that are not our friends. And how many people do we have in our country that are illegally here that want to do us harm? Why are we opening the door like that? So I think there's a lot that we can do. One is securing the border, but two is looking at ways of being able to thwart that, whether or not it's the sale of land, or also looking at our IP and asking other countries to make sure that they are helping us thwart some of the illegal activity that we're seeing through China. Tariffs is one way to make it work. But we also need to make sure that we are standing on top of technology. and we don't want China to be able to run away with artificial intelligence and the proliferation of that. Part of funding our research and development was to make sure that those innovations are happening in our country. So it is definitely going to be a multi-pronged approach because we're getting attacked by China that we don't even know about.
Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne, thanks so much.
It's great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Coming up, are we seeing another example of hostage diplomacy in China? The communist nation banned a Wells Fargo executive from leaving the country. We have expert analysis in just a moment here on NTD News Today.
That first time seeing my son, I feel like my life did a 180. I was already trying to change my perspective of life and really just be a father figure that I never had. Being present is the most important part. I'm still growing every day, becoming a better version of myself, to be the better mirror for my son. I mean, he's just growing. He's becoming his own person. Man, first I saw him dance, bro, he brings the vibes, you know what I'm saying? He brings the party no matter what. He really a definition of like why he loves somebody. And I love him to the death of me.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where did the time go? Somehow I lost all those years. Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here. How did I get here? I can see now.
You've done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Welcome back. I'm Alice Tang. A wave of new developments this week highlights the growing strain in U.S.-China relations. From hacking attacks and stolen technology to citizens caught in the crossfire. Starting off, as the U.S. and China race ahead in artificial intelligence, President Trump rolled out a new AI action plan. It focuses on government deregulation and building infrastructure like data centers. In response, China Premier Li Qiang told a major AI conference in Shanghai that Beijing plans to launch a global group to lead AI cooperation. China intends to position itself as an alternative to U.S. leadership in artificial intelligence. Meanwhile, Microsoft says 3 Chinese hacking groups breached its SharePoint platform, compromising data from U.S. agencies, including those linked to nuclear systems. A rushed security fix failed, allowing hackers to keep breaking in. On top of that, growing concerns have prompted Microsoft to remove China-based engineers from sensitive U.S. defense projects. This followed reports that foreign nationals were working on Pentagon cloud systems. In another case, a water utility in Southern California faced 6 million hacking attempts in just 1 week. Officials believe the Chinese Communist Party was testing vulnerabilities in U.S. critical infrastructure. Meanwhile, a Chinese American pleaded guilty to stealing missile detection technology for China. This included files tested to nuclear launches. Turning to Europe, the head of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, met with Chinese Communist leader Xi Jinping. She's calling for fair trade and pressing China to help end the war in Ukraine. And finally, concerns is growing over American citizens trapped in China. In just 1 week, 2 Americans and a Japanese citizen were hit with exit bans. This includes a Commerce Department employee, a U.S. Army veteran barred from leaving since April. Also this week, a Wells Fargo executive was blocked from leaving China amid a criminal investigation. Analysts say that Beijing is ramping up the use of these bans as political leverage. China's exit ban on Wells Fargo executive is reviving fears of what could have been called hostage diplomacy. The senior Wells Fargo executive barred from leaving China was born in Shanghai and now lives in Atlanta. The U.S. banking giant has reportedly suspended all travel to China after the incident. For a deeper dive, NTD's Kevin Hogan spoke with China analyst Gordon Chang, author of The Great U.S.-China Tech War, and Dan Harris, international business attorney and co-author of the award-winning China Law blog.
Gordon, let's start with you. There's been a string of similar incidents. This is not the first where foreign business people have been banned from leaving China. How does this, with Mao, fit in with those? And is this another example of hostage diplomacy?
Yeah, this certainly looks like hostage diplomacy, and China's been doing this for decades, but apparently now even more Americans are being held. The most famous case is the 2 Michaels, 2 Canadians who were grabbed for no reason at all other than China wanted to put pressure on Ottawa because Ottawa had detained this chief financial officer of Huawei at the request of the United States. And so really what we're seeing now is an intensification of hostage diplomacy. Beijing said that Ms. Mao was involved in a criminal investigation. We don't know exactly how she was, but the point is that this is occurring at a time where other Americans are being held, and this has got to be a matter of utmost importance for the Trump administration.
Understood, Gordon, and rights groups and foreign governments have criticized these Chinese exit bans, saying that they don't have that much transparency. We'll come back to you in a moment. Here, Dan, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said that they handle entry and exit bans in accordance with the law and that aforementioned criminal investigation. So what does Chinese law say about the ban on this U.S.-based Wells Fargo employee?
Well, it's very hard to know what Chinese law says about this ban because we don't know why she's being held there. They say it's part of a criminal investigation. Is it an investigation of her? Is it an investigation of one of her relatives? We just don't know. And it's very easy for China to say they're following their laws because their laws are written to always favor the Chinese Communist Party and to make it very easy to strip individuals of their rights.
Thank you for that very important context. And Gordon, the New York Post reports that Beijing uses travel bans as tactics of intimidation or to create leverage against a company. But Wells Fargo doesn't have that large of a presence in China. So how are you reading this?
Yes, well, maybe what they're doing is they're picking on a company that, if it decides to pull out, probably won't have much effect on China. As you point out, Wells Fargo doesn't have much of a Chinese presence. Now, Wells Fargo has told its employees not to go to China, and that's a good step, of course. But the point is that that's not that many people, so China's not going to be affected that much. This is not as if they went after J.P. Morgan, for instance, which would have a material effect, or Goldman Sachs. So they're taking on a company that is not that important to China.
I understand. And now you say they're taking on a company. Can you explain more about what this means and why you say that?
Well, I'm saying that because clearly, you have the situation, as Dan pointed out. We have no transparency into this at all. There are all sorts of rules that China has agreed to when it comes to detention of nationals of another country. China's just not following them. They're just not telling us what's going on. So really what we have is an assault on the United States. And as your piece pointed out before, China always attacks surreptitiously in insidious ways. And I fear that's what's going on here.
Understood, Gordon. Thank you. And now, Dan, Wells Fargo is working through, quote, the appropriate channels to repatriate Mao promptly. Is there any recourse for her? What help can be given within the context of international law?
Well, very little, because China decides when it's going to follow international law and when it isn't. And to take up something that Gordon said, what's so interesting here is that she's with Wells Fargo. And it's important to realize that China's very smart. They act intentionally. There is a reason this person was chosen. It's not random. And she was chosen to send a message. And perhaps that message is intended for JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs. Perhaps it's intended for all American businesses. Perhaps it's intended to send a message, which they often send, which is that we don't like ethnic Chinese who were born in China, who go off and become citizens of the United States and successful.
Very important to keep an eye on that, Dan. Now, Gordon, a director at Taiwan's Institute for National Defense and Security Research, Ming-Shi Shen, tells the Epoch Times that China's economy is not doing so well right now. He says the communist regime is very concerned about the outflow of money, and it's closely monitoring bank executives' movements when handling important matters. Could this travel ban involve CCP elites trying to find ways to relocate their finances?
That's always a possibility. I mean, at this point, we just don't know what it's about. Ms. Mao was involved in factoring, and factoring is one of the possible ways that a Chinese party can get money out of the country. Right now, we are seeing more and more cash from China leave. It's not at the rate as it was in the middle of last decade. But nonetheless, we can see this because the Chinese economy isn't growing at the 5.2% pace that they reported for the second quarter of this year. It's probably zero, maybe even a little bit less than zero from what we can tell from price data. So yes, China's very worried about an outflow of cash because we always know that China's currency controls, they're porous, especially when the Chinese people realize, look, they just want their money out. They're able to do it.
And now, Gordon, I understand that this is a little bit preliminary in this whole thing. We have to let the facts surface, or what the Chinese regime says are the facts, which may not necessarily be the case. But how would coordination between, say, a U.S.-based banking executive work with Chinese elites in order to move money around?
Well, I think that essentially most Chinese elites wouldn't be using U.S. banks. They would be using other channels where they've got more influence. They would be using, for instance, casinos, all sorts of things that they can do. But maybe somebody felt that the factoring business at Wells Fargo was something that they could do. And you have also, because it involves trade you can do over-invoicing or under-invoicing to get money in or out. So it's a natural channel for it. I'm a little bit surprised it would be Wells Fargo, but as I mentioned, maybe they just felt that they could take a small company and, as Dan said, make an example of them to send messages to other players that are more important to Beijing.
Thank you both for this clarity that you're bringing to this. Now, Dan, in a separate incident, China banned a U.S. Commerce Department employee from leaving China. The State Department says the Chinese regime arbitrarily enforces exit bans. What can Americans do to protect themselves from this?
Not go to China. China has enacted exit bans against thousands of Americans in the last 10 years. I used to write about it all the time, and businesses would write me and complain. The reality is that if your company might owe money to a Chinese company, you're going to be blocked from leaving. If your company has done anything that China deems not to like, you might be stopped from leaving. These exit bans happen all the time. And Americans are afraid of them, and they're getting more afraid. It's interesting because this focus has started recently, or started again recently, because of Ms. Mao. But the reality is, in the last 3 to 4 months, I've been hearing from an increasing number of clients who say they're done going to China. It's almost a feeling they have that the tensions are increasing between China and the West, not just the United States, but the EU and various other countries. And they do not want to be there when something very bad happens to a large number of people. I hate to say this, but the Russian invasion of Ukraine really sobered people up about what can happen to them and their businesses in a country like Russia and China. And so people are very wary.
Understood. Now, Gordon, some media are encapsulating the tariffs that President Trump has put on Chinese goods in framing the timeline of this. Can you offer any insight as to whether or not those could be related?
Anything could be related because, as we've been talking about, we just don't know what's going on. Right now, there are going to be tariff discussions in Stockholm next week. Apparently, our August 12th deadline will be extended. President Trump just allowed NVIDIA to sell H20 chips to China, which allows AI integration into the Chinese military. So you would think that things are going pretty well, but that's not necessarily the calculus in Beijing, and we just don't know what that is. It could be a pressure move. It could be unrelated. We're going to find out maybe later. But the point is, as Dan said, there's only one way to protect yourself, and that is not to go to China. And now I think it's up to the State Department to actually issue an advisory saying, no, you should not go to China. And maybe even the President of the United States needs to use emergency powers to prohibit travel to China because it is dangerous. And the United States, as a practical matter, can't do very much for anyone who gets caught in China's snare.
Gordon Chang and Dan Harris, thank you both for coming on our show.
Coming up, golden milk, an elixir from ancient China, ancient India. What are its benefits and how can you make it at home? We have the answers after the break. And US will soon begin charging a new visa integrity fee for incoming travelers. A travel blogger shares her insights on the update. More in just a moment here on China Info, here on NTD News Today.
Divinely inspired traditional oil painting inspires compassion. Artwork created in truth and beauty illuminates a path to goodness. Rediscover traditional art, revive classical culture. We warmly invite oil painters from around the world to participate in the 7th NTD International Figure Painting Competition, a celebration of classical realism. Please visit oilpainting.ntdtv.com.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Big things are happening at Mathis Home. Their everyday low prices are now even better. Shop price drop alerts and save up to 25% off store-wide. Shop the latest looks in dining rooms, all at big savings. This set is a great deal, perfect for family get-togethers. You get the table and 4 side chairs for just $7.99 in your choice of finishes. They have over 100 dining sets in stock with fast and free delivery. Look for price drop alert tags and save now at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
Where's your emergency?
The United States will begin charging a new visa integrity fee when issuing visas to foreign nationals. This refundable fee was created by the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, but it won't come into effect immediately. Joining us today is Jen Ruiz. She is a travel blogger, content creator, and author. So Jen, as a travel blogger, with news like this $250 visa fee, how can viewers stay informed and adapt their travel plans if they want to visit us and avoid extra fees?
It is a little bit difficult because it's still being rolled out. So we actually don't have any information yet of what will be the board, what will be the process to get a refund. Right now, the best way to stay informed is to stay tuned to the news like you're doing right now, but there will hopefully be more details released in the coming weeks.
Thank you. So the Secretary of Homeland Security has the power to increase this fee and adjust it for inflation. So are you concerned at all about whether the price could change, especially ahead of the 2026 World Cup and 2028 Olympics?
There are a lot of concerning things about this fee. Visa fees are not unusual, right? They're very common all over the world, but this is the first one that's conditional and refundable. So it's refundable based on your compliance with these predetermined conditions. And that absolutely has a possibility to serve as a deterrent for people who maybe can't afford the fee or are worried that they may not be compliant for whatever reason. And these are already on top of concerns that they may have about having their phones searched upon entry or maybe having warnings from their home countries against traveling to the US.
So even with this fee being refundable, critics warn this integrity fee could discourage visa seekers and harm U.S. states that are dependent on international tourism, for example, like New York, California, Florida. Do you think these criticisms are valid?
Absolutely. Even a 5% reduction in foreign tourism has the potential to really wreak havoc on local businesses. And as you mentioned, we have upcoming global events that already I did a trip to Washington State, and they are very concerned about how their tourism is going to be impacted as they were expecting a big influx of people and are now worried that may not be the case. They're already seeing a reduction of Canadians coming across the border. So it absolutely has the potential to really be a big impact, even with a small reduction in international tourism.
So what's your advice for states that can remedy this lower tourism rate, amid the new fee?
I think that we're seeing a lot of creative marketing campaigns from states that want to be clear that they are welcoming foreign visitors. For instance, Rochester, New York just released a new campaign. They're right across the border from Canada, and they've been encouraging Canadians to say, hey, you're still welcome here. Hey, we still want to be partners with you. So states still have, and local tourism boards still have that degree of autonomy where they can decide their marketing priorities. You know, the Fort Lauderdale Tourism Board decided that they wanted to have their marketing priorities be towards welcoming the LGBTQ plus community in light of recent legislation that maybe seems restricting towards them in Florida. So they've wanted to stand out as a place where they're welcome. So you do have that ability as a local tourism board to decide your marketing priorities and to appeal directly to your audience.
Jen, thank you so much for joining us here today and sharing your insights. You can visit Jen's Instagram account at Jen on a jet plane, where she posts amazing travel destinations and experiences. I love your Instagram account. Golden milk, an elixir from ancient India. NTD's Stephania Cox spoke with physician and Dr. Sonal Bhatta to learn about the many health benefits and an easy way to make it at home.
Today we're looking at a soothing and healing drink that people can make with some things they might already have in their pantry. Golden milk. It sounds so delicious. We're excited to learn about it and sample it. It looks so beautiful.
It looks so delicious too. Tell us about the health benefits.
Yes, so you've all heard about golden milk, right? And golden lattes, they're the trend right now. But here I'm trying to let you understand the wisdom that exists behind what it is and how do you make it. I'm going to start with milk. It's really important to have warm milk when you're creating your golden milk. Cold milk is not good for the gut. And you want to drink this at night. So you want to give warm and nourishment at night. So you pour some of that warm milk into a mug, not hot. And then you start with the first ingredient, which is turmeric. So we have a spoon. You're going to take about half a teaspoon of turmeric and stir it in. Now, what's turmeric? Turmeric actually is the star of the ingredient.
Okay.
It is anti-inflammatory. It actually regulates your immune system, and it cleanses the liver. So when you're sleeping, those are the activities that you want your body to go through. So that is turmeric. The next one is cinnamon. So cinnamon, I usually recommend 1/4 of a teaspoon in the milk. Now, cinnamon is very grounding, but it also actually regulates your blood sugar levels. And that is great when you have those late night cravings. This is going to suppress those late night cravings. And it's also very grounding. So cinnamon is a great addition. The third one is ginger.
Okay.
Now you wouldn't think to put ginger in milk, but here is ginger. And ginger is actually going to activate digestion, something that you need to happen at night. And it's also helping with circulation. So when you think about feeling like heavy, you're feeling a little groggy, you're feeling cold, this is a great ingredient to put in your milk.
So, like, just comparing to, you're saying, you know, sometimes late at night you have those cravings, but having ginger is not going to make you more hungry?
So the cinnamon is going to curb that. So you're not going to feel the need because it's satisfying that hunger pang that you're getting after dinner and you're thinking about the pantry.
There's
you're
some
not
real
going to have
synergy
that.
here.
Exactly.
And in preparing this, I think most people think of milk as in the fridge. It needs to be cold. And you're saying don't make it hot, but how would you recommend you bring it to the right temperature?
I would say warm it up on the stove and not just before boiling. Just before you start to see those bubbles, that is warm.
I mean, I love warming things up on the stove, but obviously a lot of people use the microwave. I wonder what Ayurveda thinks of that.
Honestly, Ayurveda doesn't recommend microwaves. It's a 5,000 ancient year old when microwaves didn't even exist. So you don't want to radiate it, but if you have to do it in a rush, then just cover the glass. Cover your milk in the microwave if you're really going to use it. So that you're not nuking the milk too much.
Don't nuke the milk, but the stove is the preferred way
Exactly.
to go. Okay.
And you know, we're talking about milk. I would say cow milk is great, grass-fed milk. If you prefer not to have dairy, then you can have almond or oatmeal. So there's different options, but yeah.
And I see a few more ingredients here.
So the fourth one is actually it's black pepper. Now black pepper is, would you really put black pepper in milk? It is so important to add black pepper when you add turmeric because black pepper activates the curcumin in the turmeric and makes it bioavailable. It's like the spark to the turmeric. So every time you add turmeric, even in cooking, add a little bit, just a pinch. That's all it's required to activate the curcumin in the turmeric. And that allows for the actual bioavailability of turmeric to activate itself.
Okay.
I remember, so last time we spoke, you talked a lot about the gut-brain axis, and I've heard a lot about turmeric and its effects on the brain. How does that play into this, and perhaps taking it at night? I don't know if that helps.
It absolutely does. And you know what? It's a perfect segue for this ingredient. It's optional, but it's one of my favorites. It's cardamom. It's grounded. And cardamom, it has a floral and a little bit of a sweet note, which is wonderful in a warm milk. But more importantly, it soothes the mind and the gut and takes away the bloating that you may have at the end of the day. So that combination is there for a reason, to give you all of that mind-gut alignment, soothing your gut, and actually activating cellular repair while you sleep.
I love this because you can't always get all of those spices into your meal throughout the day, especially if you're not cooking for yourself necessarily.
Correct.
But there's one more star here I know that we haven't yet spoken about.
This is ghee. It's clarified butter. It's available everywhere in grocery stores now. Ghee is such an important ingredient because it is how the spices will travel to the rest of the body tissues. Without it, the spices are dry, and so they can't really transport themselves. So we need some sort of oil. And ghee is great. If you don't like ghee, you can use coconut oil. But
what is it exactly?
It's
Do you guys mind if I
please
bottoms
start.
up?
I'm hearing maybe not yet.
It's literally clarified butter. So you boil, the way they make it in Asian tradition is you melt the unsalted butter.
Okay.
And once it separates, as you're boiling it, the top is fat. And that fat is really good to nourish your joints, nourish your bones, activate all of the spices that go in with it. So
I can almost see that layer at the top,
exactly.
the sort of bubbles.
And you only
oils.
put like a quarter of a teaspoon in a glass of milk. That's all is required. Less is more when it comes to spices and ingredients.
Oh, fascinating.
And once you're done, you whisk it, you stir it. I like to whisk it because it gives that foam, and that foam looks like a latte, a modern day Ayurvedic latte.
Yeah, and the ceremony of putting it in a nice little
cup. You can add a turmeric. You can put a turmeric root, or you can add a cinnamon stick as a presentation.
Oh, that's lovely. And also, this kind of ritual around drinking is very calming, you know, especially as we're talking about. You're kind of like calming down, getting a good night's sleep.
I'm going in.
What's
I can't wait any longer. Is that all right?
Yes, please do. Please try it. And I recommend drinking it about an hour before bedtime as you're doing your winding down routine. The ghee in itself is going to actually help with sleep as well as stress. It reduces your stress levels and gives you that nice sleep without needing any other type of assistance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very, you can feel that calming like from the first sip.
Delicious.
It really just kind of slows you down a bit.
Yeah, and there's no sugar in yours, but if you choose to add sugar, I would say use raw honey, local honey.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yes.
This is great, but a little honey would really
a little honey
give it a little
or jaggery. I would say no artificial sweeteners because you're trying to give your body nutrients, right? So stick with raw honey. And in Ayurveda, you do not want to heat honey. So you don't want it in a hot cup because honey is revered in medicine as a transporter of medicine. So it cannot be warmed up.
Oh, that good bacteria that you get
yes,
with it.
Yes, exactly.
Sort of sticking with that food as medicine theme that you were describing to us last week, huh?
Yeah. What do you think?
I think it's delicious.
It could be a family routine at night. You could bring the whole family together and have a golden milk and talk about your day.
You think about the cookies and milk sort of end of the day for children. If you do this, they're going to be getting all of that extra important nutrients.
I did convert my kids from cold milk to a golden milk.
Now they're all in?
They're all in. They asked for it.
That's great. Wow.
Yeah.
Coming up, learn more about the world's first streaming platform dedicated to uplifting values-driven entertainment. It's called We the Studios streaming platform. Stay tuned.
I can't get a hold of my mom.
I'm sure it's nothing.
I've called her 5 times.
I'm sure she's fine.
Is Grandma okay? Help! I've fallen and I can't get up.
Don't worry, ma'am. We're sending help right now.
Hello?
Hello, this is Life Alert. Your mother had an emergency, and we dispatched paramedics to her home.
Oh my gosh, what happened?
She had a fall, but don't worry. She is safe, and the paramedics are helping her right now.
Thank you.
Life Alert saves a life every 11 minutes. With one simple touch of a button, Life Alert sends help immediately. Whether it's to report a fall, a medical emergency, or an intruder, Life Alert sends first responders fast.
For a free brochure, call 800-382-9846. 800-382-9846. That's 800-382-9846.
As we naturally age, many people are getting zero amount of this incredible and unique substance. That's when we start seeing an impact in our joints, skin, nails, and even our digestion.
People ask me, Dr. X, what is the #1 supplement I should be taking? My answer is multi-collagen protein.
People's reactions to me, people were like, what are you doing? What is going on? You look amazing. You have a glow about you.
What makes Ancient Nutrition Multi-Collagen stand out from other brands? 10 types of collagen. It's grass-fed, pasture-raised with vitamin C and probiotics. It's proven to reduce joint discomfort rapidly, continuously, and persistently. It improves the appearance of crow's feet after 4 weeks and improves skin tone after 8 weeks. And it promotes hair thickness, growth, and a reduction in hair breakage.
It has transformed everything from my hair. Like, my hair was starting to kind of just, come out, and I don't have that anymore. My skin feels amazing.
Call the number on your screen and find out how to get a free bottle when you order, plus free shipping and our 30-day money-back guarantee. And as a bonus, we will include Dr. Josh Axe and Jordan Rubin's revolutionary book, Multi-Collagen Makeover, free with your order, plus free shipping and free returns.
I have implicit trust in Dr. Axe because the plan worked. I'm living proof of it.
This is the collagen protein that is backed by clinical studies. It's what my family uses, it's what I use, and I know you're going to benefit in a big way as well.
Love the results or get your money back. This special TV offer is not available in stores. Call the number on your screen or go online now.
Welcome back. I'm Alice Tang. A fresh, uplifting vision in entertainment. We, the Studios, is the world's first value-driven streaming platform. NTD Stephania Cox spoke with founders Curtis and Cara Leopardo, who set out on a mission to deliver original content that boldly upholds traditional American values.
You guys worked in Hollywood, and now you've launched this new streaming platform. So what are the values that you wanted to bring into this new venture and this new product?
So I definitely could speak to that. The name We the Studios, it's inspired by our founding documents. So we the people, right? It's guaranteeing that you can live free and that your rights do not come from the government, it comes from the people. And so We the Studios is by the people, for the people. We are highlighting everyday American families with traditional American values, kind of the people that are forgotten about currently on TV.
Let's dig a little deeper into that. What other choices have you made with We the Studios to embody these kinds of values?
So we're parents of 4 children, and I was repeatedly annoyed with walking into the room saying, what are you watching? What was that? What episode was that? What TV show was that? And so with the skill set that we have, we decided to take action, and with that, we decided to highlight traditional and nuclear families. So there's moms and dads. The dad knows best versus the children. Working families, women that work, fathers that work, children that mind their parents for the first time on TV.
Gosh, I can really resonate with that. I don't have children of my own, but I've taken care of many nieces and nephews. And when I'm sitting there, they're allowed to watch some kids shows, designated kids shows that they choose that, the parents know the show. but you'll sit down and watching it with them. Sometimes I'm quite shocked by some of the content that comes up. And I guess what I really loved when I saw your platform is that you say that your content is inspiring and that children mirror it, or it gives them, you kind of acknowledge that children mirror the content that they're shown. And so I was just wondering if you could talk to us a little about why you're so passionate about the effects of content on children.
So working in Hollywood, I really understand that, children, they do what they see, not what they're told, right? And so entertainment shapes culture, and I think a lot of people forget that. We looked at our elected officials, whether they're local on the federal level, where our kids aren't watching that. The hair trends that we see, the way our children are dressing, they emulate those things. So we're highlighting really, really great families, really, really great kids, because ultimately my legacy will be my children, and not just my children, our nation's children.
I think a lot of families can relate to, in the old days, maybe if you watched a movie at home, you went to the movie rental place, and it was a very conscious decision. But now with streaming and everything always on demand, it actually sometimes can be harder for families, and they argue like trying to just start a movie, and it's like bedtime by the time they get started. So tell us a little bit about your vision for this platform to make it easy for parents to not have that challenge when they're ready to go and watch something with kids.
We're focused more on quality than quantity, because there's so much to choose from when you go on Amazon or Netflix, and it's just too much. You can't even make up your mind, and you end up going to sleep. But we actually curate some of the best stories and best families, best ensembles that we put together. And it's all non-woke entertainment, right? So we live by those values. We're telling traditional American stories, and it's just something to, get your family around, on the sofa and enjoy something at night, and, pop some popcorn and have a good time,
It's important to note that we also don't highlight any profanity, no sexual innuendos, and no alcohol in any of our programming. So we wanted as parents to make sure, that when your children are in front of the film, in front of the television, watching our content, they're being introduced to stories that educate and inspire, and they're not going to inspire them to swear or drink alcohol or do those types of things. So everything is extremely uplifting that we're doing.
Yeah, and I just love that this family-focused content is coming from a family. As you said, this is inspired by your parenting, but also you're thinking of all of the other parents out there and all of the other children out there. You've said actually that you're working to create a kind of cultural momentum around this. Talk to us about that.
So, our children, they're constantly looking at us, right? Like, what am I wearing? What am I doing? What am I saying? And so when they're not looking at me, they're in front of screens. Our children have more screen time than ever before. That is not going to change anytime soon. So if I want to effectively do something about that, other than taking away an iPad, which it's really a means to an end, we have to create quality programming for our children. And that's exactly what it is. We are programming our children to act a certain way, to mind the parents a certain way, to listen to Dad Knows Best. I mean, currently, if you're watching TV on other streaming platforms, you're seeing the men are under attack. The dad's always the big goofball, the mom's kind of the airhead, and the kids know best. And in reality, that is horrible for American culture.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the challenges that you faced in trying to launch this. Obviously, it takes a lot of capital, it takes a lot of creativity. So tell us a little bit about your journey, and because people can go and watch it right now, right? So tell us a little bit about the challenges that you guys faced to launch this.
So the challenges, we're self-funded, and we're a very, very small team, and a lot of people were scared to work with us because of the fallout from Hollywood. So initially, a lot of the editors and producers and the people that we need to work with, they didn't want to work with us, or if they did, they didn't want to put their name on it. But what's happened recently,
they're coming around.
They're coming.
Like, wow, this is pretty cool. This is pretty nice.
They're coming around, and they want to work with We the Studios. But initially, it was very difficult to find quality crew. It's reality TV, so we go where the talent is. So we're working in a small town in Kentucky. It's 4 hours from the airport. There's nowhere to eat. And so there has just been a lot of logistical challenges, a lot of challenges finding quality crew, but we're just doing it. Every single day we're just doing it and pushing forward, and now people are really understanding and seeing the quality of our content, and they're starting to say, hey, we want to work with you guys.
And you mentioned this shoot that's happening in a real rural community. Give our audience a little expectation of the types of shows that they can see on We the People, the platform.
So our flagship show is called Raising Reynolds. It's a husband and wife living in Kentucky. They cannot have children of their own, so they opted to adopt from foster care. They wanted one child. Well, surprise, they ended up with 4 biracial children in small town Kentucky. And they're raising these children, guess what, to have values and that dad knows best without social media as well. So we're following this story of this family, and it's just so inspiring to see 4 really, really great kids that listen to their parents. They have great social skills, they're super athletic, they're just adorable, and they're definitely the kind of kids that our nation kids could look up to. Like, hey, you don't have to be on social media to be cool. You can just be a kid and go outside and play. It's okay.
We got to wrap up now, but can you tell our audience where they can find your streaming platform?
Definitely. We're on wethestudios.com. You can subscribe for less than a cup of coffee a month, which is $3.99. And with continued subscribers, we can continue to make more content and continue to deliver high quality shows for America.
Well, Karen Curtis, thank you so much for coming in this morning. Good luck with everything.
The US and the EU strike a deal before the August 1st deadline. Day 2 of President Trump's visit to Scotland, diplomacy taking center stage on the fairway. The president meeting at his Gulf resort with the head of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen. Pharmaceutical, steel, and aluminum are not covered in the talks. After about 1 hour of negotiations, Trump announcing the European Union is going to purchase from the US $750 billion worth of energy. He says the bloc agrees to invest $600 billion in the US and to adopt a 0% tariff rate for imports from the US to the EU. The president also saying the EU agrees to purchase a vast amount of military equipment. Furthermore, Trump says we are agreeing that the tariff straight across for automobiles and everything else will be a straight across tariff of 15%. Trump is expected to meet UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer on Monday and First Minister of Scotland John Swinney on Tuesday. That's all for today's news. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us for NTD's evening news at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific.